But thanks for coming anyway. Nice to see you all. So as always, you have the option to keep your camera on if you're happy with the camera on, and then I can check you. Although, I'm limited in what I can check online, obviously. So look, listen to your body, listen to my instructions, adjust as you need to adjust, move as you need to move, and be still as you need to be still. So all of these things, and stay checked into your breath throughout the class. And because if all else fails, your breath will give you the information you need for sure. Okay, so I'm going to mute you all before we start the class. We'll give it another minute or so before we start in case we have any joiners. And I'll just bring this. Okay, great. Okay, so I hope you're all well. If anyone does have anything to share with me in terms of injuries or anything, you can let me know now. And then I can say, if I know you're working with dodgy knees or something, I can say, oh, you need to do this for your knees in this posture. But other than that, if you're all happy and well, that's okay. Now, how's the sound? I have muted you. It sounds like there might be, maybe there's someone else coming on. Let me put you on gallery view for a moment. Oh, hi, Sean. Otherwise known as Sam.
Sorry, yeah, I don't know how to change that. That's my sound. I don't know how to change it, so
that's
sorry.
Fine. That's
it's
fine.
me. In case you thought you had an intruder.
No, that's okay. You're welcome. Sam's welcome too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, nice to hear from you anyway. So yeah, you may be choosing to keep your video off, perhaps, Sean, and maybe the same for you, Leslie. That's totally fine. Those of you with your video on, obviously, I can see you all, and I can give you some tips if I need to. So let's start the class then now. Hi, Lucy. Everyone can hear me okay, and you've got a good view. I recommend either, well, you can, if you click speaker view, then you'll have me on your big screen, or if you're on a phone, obviously you can have me filling up the screen rather than gallery view, because you want a good view of what we're doing rather than like tiny little views of people, which is the view that I get. So either pin me or put it on speaker view, and then you get the best view for the class. Okay, so let's come down onto our mat, and we're going to come to standing, which is pretty rare actually these days. Mostly starting my classes sitting down, but we're going to come to standing. I'm just going to take my jumper off, bear with me, because I've got to try and do it without disturbing my ear pods. Okay. Great. Okay. Now let's come to stand. Tadasana. Okay. Bringing the feet in close towards each other. So we can make contact with our feet, but we might not make contact with our feet. So it will be dependent on your ankles, your knees, and your hips, on your own personal anatomy, and how much contact there is through your feet. So just take that contact that feels appropriate. You should feel comfortable in the ankles, knees, and hips. Hi, Louise. You can just see it's you. Okay, and rest your arms down by your side. So Tadasana, and if you're finding that you're not particularly open across the chest at this moment in time, you can take a little circling of the arms. So that will encourage your chest to open. And you can also use a little pressure through your fingertips, which you may walk across beneath your collarbones to open out that area as well. Okay, so just take what you need to allow this natural opening through the chest. And then perhaps if you're comfortable and you feel balanced and steady, so, by some respects, Tadasana does have elements of a balancing pose. Okay. So let's bring ourselves into balance. And if you feel steady, if you feel, really easeful and supported through your feet, if you're able to drop down into your feet and feel the ground beneath your feet, and you feel, not too wobbly, there will be movement. There's always movement in the body. But if you can feel that steadiness, then you might close your eyes. So an evening yoga practice naturally lends itself to an introspection. So let's take a few moments to attune to the body, not just simply the shape of the body, but let's really feel in the body. Feel deep within. So we can use our breath to encourage us to feel into the body. And we can allow the breath to be naturally soft. It might be that you take some deeper breaths, perhaps, to start you off to just connect with your breath. Sometimes we need to take some really deliberate breaths to be able to tune into that relationship with our breath. But once we've found our breath, then we may start to settle into a softer breath. And a softer breath requires a softening around the torso. It allows for more movement, so it naturally allows more space for the breath. And then we can tune into the energetic signature of the breath, the pranic signature of the breath, and feel the prana moving through the body, almost like a fluttering through the body. So there's a word that I particularly like in Sanskrit, which is uchalata, which can mean this sort of sparkling divine presence. Sparkling divine presence. And we feel that with the breath. So the breath is leading us into awakening through the body. This is the whole purpose of yoga, is this movement towards awakening. Okay. Now we could stay here. And I certainly could. It's one of my favorite postures, as many of you will know. So underestimated, but so much depth in Tadasana, because it requires us to be really present to make it yoga. Otherwise we drift off and, we're sort of half-heartedly here, because it doesn't require, physical effort as such, or not much physical effort. So the effort that's required here, the tapas, the discipline that we apply to our posture, is to stay present with it. And then when we do that, this uchalata experience, this sparkling awakeness through the body comes forth. Okay. So we're going to place our hands to our hips. We're going to take a nice wide step with the legs. So we're in a wide stride here. We're going to check the alignment of our feet. So the midline of your foot is in line with the midline of the other foot. So just check that, look down. If in doubt, your toes can slightly turn in. There's very, very few people who it suits to have the toes turned out, because it tends to close us around the sacrum area. But, you may be one of those rare people. So, do feel free to adjust your position as you need to. And then with the feet wide, the toes can spread. So let's lift up the toes and feel the space before we place them back down. I'd like you for a moment to just feel the air between your toes if you can. And of course, that air is representing space between the toes. And then we'll allow our toes to come back down to the floor. Our hands are on our hips. We're finding a nice light lift up through the body. So what we want to happen here, because the wider we take our legs, the more tendency there is to collapse into the lower back. So we want to keep that length, this space between the pelvis and the rib cage. So hands can be on top of the hips, and then you can lift. So you can use this as a little purchase point to lift up through. Okay, perfect. Now, we're going to raise our arms up above our head. And we're going to reach up into the fingertips. We're going to breathe here. And we're going to move as we need to move. So any posture where the arms come over the head, there can be a tendency for some people to move into tension into the upper back and neck. Now, there's various ways we can deal with that. We can make sure that we are not sort of gripping in our shoulders. We want a little bit of space. So it might be that you need to bend your elbows a little. Might be that you need to move a little, and you can move in any way that's useful, stretching one arm up, stretching the other arm up, swaying a little from side to side perhaps, a little light tone in the belly. Perfect. Okay, now let's take our arms out wide to shoulder height. Have your palms facing forwards. Breathe. Deepen into your feet, and as you deepen into your feet, I'd like you to feel a rising up through the inner seam of your legs, so up through the inner thighs. As you feel that drawing up through the inner thighs, which can be assisted with a little more depth through the base of the big toe. We can then follow that lift up through the inner thighs, up through the midline of the body. So it's almost like we take that lift directly up through the central of the pelvic floor, through the center of the pelvic floor, and then up through the center of the body. Okay, that's it, breathe. Okay, now we're going to bring the left arm over towards the right. So keeping that arm extended. Now you can let your body turn into this. Your hand will not meet the other hand because we're keeping our feet planted. You are free to bend your knees into it if you need to. So particularly if there's any pulling on the knees, you should bend your knees into this. But we're just taking our arms over to one side. We're breathing. Okay, now you can raise that left arm up, 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 up and over and back to where it came from. And take a breath. And then take your right arm over towards the left arm. That's it, perfect. Breathing. That's it, breathe. Deep breaths. You can feel this stretch across the shoulder. Remember, you are free to move into this. So you may move the arm back and forth. A little light tone of the belly will support the back of the body. So make sure the back of your body isn't sort of rounding into a, an arched position in the lower back. We want to feel this support. Okay, come back in. Bring that right arm up and over. Bring your hands to your hips. And again, take a breath. Take a breath that you really connect to, that you even enjoy. There is an absolute joy in the breath when we really give ourselves to it, when we really feel it. Okay, now I didn't mention equipment that you might need at the beginning of the class, but you're all familiar with what we use. But If you, we're going to come into a forward bend from here, so we're going to turn from the hip joint, so you might want a block on the floor in front of you. We are going to move into a couple of different positions from there, but you can have that block for a midway stage if you need it. So our hands, you can place your hands, let's wrap the hands around the pelvis. So see if you can take hold of the actual bony structure of the pelvis there. Okay, and then I'd like you to feel as you deepen your feet into the floor, so feel the ability to send depth into your feet and to rise up through the body. Okay, and then as you rise up through the body and you start to get this space in the waist, you're going to pour your pelvis forward. So there's a tipping forwards through the pelvis, feet deepening into the floor, breath flowing, and then there's a point at which you may get a little dipping in the lower back. I want you to bring your hands to the floor, or you can bring your hands to a block. And then you can take some deep breaths there. Deep breaths, play into it now. Bend your knees as much as you need to, and you might bend one knee and take a little lean over to one side and bend the other knee and lean over to the other side, so you can start to work through this stretch. You know, remember the purpose of yoga, although, you know, of course we all have lots of different purposes and reasons to practice yoga, but when we're talking about the tradition of yoga, our purpose is always to move to this state of integration. So integration does require us to listen to the body, to listen to the breath. And then, you know, when we're listening, sometimes that listening will, you know, reveal an instruction of what we need to do, whether we need to move or to be still. Okay, now we're going to place our hands, if you can, onto the floor. If you've got a block, I'd like it to be so you have your hands both equally placed. So you've either got two blocks or you've got a flat block and you've got both hands onto the block. It's fine to bend your knees, okay? We're not fully into a forward bend, so we're still in this halfway position, because what we're going to do is we're going to really take some weight through the hands, and we're going to, let's lift up the right leg and we're going to just tuck it in towards the left leg. So there's a little lean over here. The foot's off the floor, the knee is bent. You're just shifting over to that side, you're breathing. You can feel into that weight bearing. If it becomes too much on the wrists, just step back out into the wide stride. Okay, now we'll step that foot back out again. So we're back to the center. Just check the alignment of your feet, that your toes are equidistant from the front of your mat, and take a deep breath. Okay, then deepening your hands into the floor, we're going to pick up the left leg and we're going to draw that in towards the other leg. So the knee is bent, it's just the right foot that's on the floor. Hands are on the floor. There's this little slight twisting action here. Breathing. Okay, then step the foot wide again. Place the foot, make sure your feet are equidistant from each other and from the front of your mat. Come up onto your fingertips, give yourself a little bit more space and breathe. So let everything settle, move into it if you need to. A little wiggle perhaps might be needed now. Okay, now we're going to turn our left toes in very slightly. They can't really turn too far in this position, so just give them a little turn in, and then give the right toes a little turn out, not all the way out like we would when we're preparing for Trikonasana, for instance, triangle pose, but more towards a 45-degree angle rather than a 90-degree angle relative to where the foot started. Then you're going to walk your hands over towards the inside of that leg. So this will allow your right knee to bend, okay? So we're in this sort of semi-sideways lunge here. And then from here, we're going to allow the body to fold through the inside of the thigh, hands to the floor, elbows releasing down, head releasing down. You're taking some deep breaths. You're moving into it as you need to. So it's a pretty strong stretch through the inner thighs, through the adductors. So let's breathe into that stretch. Let's give ourselves here and now. And don't push, don't force. Okay, press into your hands and walk yourselves back around to the center. Realign your feet with each other. Take a breath that you are fully committed to. You stay with the breath. From initiation to completion. Okay, now the right toes can slightly turn in a little. The left toes can slightly turn out a little. You can walk your hands over to the inside of the leg. And then again, your knee will bend. So you'll bend your left knee towards a right angle there. So the knee is above the ankle. And then you may start to lower down towards your forearms, bending the elbows, releasing the head down. So you're sinking down through the inside of the thigh and you're breathing. You may move into that if you need to. That's it, deep breaths. Okay, well done. Press into your hands. Walk yourselves back around to the center. And again, another deep breath. If you need to bring your feet in closer to each other for a moment or two, go ahead, maybe grab your block to stack your hands. If you're quite happy here, we are going to do one more posture from this wide stride. So this time, we're going to walk our right hand forwards a little, and then we're going to thread our left arm underneath the right arm, and we're going to take our hand over towards the outside of the leg. That's it. So we're coming into a twist. Now, you can hold the leg anywhere. You might be holding at the top of the thigh. If you haven't got so much length available in your arms, you may be holding on the outside of the shin, or you may be holding all the way down towards the ankle. Your right hand can walk forwards, walk your fingertips forwards and breathe. So let's take the breath into the back of the thigh. Perfect. Okay, and then let's slowly unravel and come to the center. And again, just take a breath here. And then we're going to go to the other side. So your right arm's going to thread underneath your left arm. It's going to take hold of the outside of the left leg, somewhere along the outside of the leg, wherever you comfortably reach. And then you walk your left fingertips forwards and you breathe and you enjoy that really deep stretch that we get across the back of the body here. And we allow ourselves to, rest in the form that we're creating. Rest in the form. Okay, come back to the center, fingertips to the floor. Take a breath. And now I'm sure that your adductor muscles, your inner thighs are probably absolutely desperate to get back to each other. So we're going to do that. We're going to walk our feet in towards each other, and then we're going to come down to a kneeling posture. So just come down so we can pause here and rest. Maybe one or two of you need a bit of support with a folded blanket or block or a book between your buttocks and heels. So that will give your knees a little bit more space. So just sitting, resting your hands one on top of the other. And find your breath. Find your breath. And find your seat here. So we have this word that we use to describe what we call a yoga posture. That word is asana. But the translation of this word is actually seat. And in part, it's because when we come into these postures, it's in part because it originally was used for seated postures. These were the common asanas, were meditation seated positions. But it's also been used and carried into these postures that for that purpose, that we want to find a seat within whatever pose we're doing, whether we're standing, we're sitting, or lying down. So in other words, we want to reside in the body here and now. Okay, well done. Let's just walk our hands forward. So we're onto our hands and knees, and then we can just give our legs a little stretch out like this now. So just stretch them out. Maybe you want to move them a little from side to side behind you. And then we'll come back down and we're going to come into a wide stride seated posture. So giving your adductor muscles good old stretch this evening, those inner thigh muscles. So we're going to take this wide stride. Now this is where you may need a block to sit on. You draw your buttock flesh out and back, and you can sit yourself on a block or a folded blanket. Have the corner end, not sure how the light is in here at the moment for you. I'll turn some more lights on in a moment. You have the corner end towards your pubics, okay? So your buttocks are supported and your thighs are off the block. Now your hands can come to the floor behind you perhaps, or in front of you. We're looking to find this upright seated posture. Okay. And then again, settle into your breath. Now, we've started to extend out through the inner thighs. So, they're sort of warming up to this kind of position. So hopefully, we're easing into the posture. But if there's a strong sensation there through the inner thighs, then you can use your breath to assist that, to support the inner thighs. The breath can be a means of support for any element of our yoga practice. It will respond to, our heart rate. It will respond to our engagement, and it will respond to, our intention within the practice. But likewise, the body also responds to the breath in turn. So, we can, when we need to, sort of take hold of the breath and use the breath to provide that support to the body, so the body then can create a response to the breath. So if you need that support, direct your breath to wherever it's needed. Okay, we're going to take a An inhalation and lift up, and as we exhale, you can turn towards your right leg. You can bring your fingertips on the floor, either side of the leg. And then we can either stay here, and this is enough. It's a really, wonderful twist in that we feel nice and open. Some twists can make us feel closed, but there's a really spacious experience to this kind of twist. So perhaps you're enjoying that and you can stay there, or you may fold yourselves perhaps over that front leg. As I breathe. Forehead is soft, jaw released. So all forward bends, of course, they don't necessarily have to have this quality. It depends on how we approach them. If we approach them with striving, then that will impact the energy of the posture. But generally, as a rule, a forward bending posture will have this calming effect on the body, tends to drop us into the parasympathetic nervous system, the state of rest and digest, feed and breathe, safe and social. All of these things are used as a description for this state of, being at ease, feeling safe, feeling calm. Okay. So slowly bring yourselves up now. Come back into the center. You may need to readjust your buttocks if you feel you've slightly moved out of alignment. I often will need a little readjustment. And again, find your breath, and then we're going to go to the other side. So we're going to inhale as we rise up and exhale and lift and turn. Pause. And then again here, you might be moving the body a little. You might be perhaps swaying into it. You might just be focusing on the twist, or you might be starting to fold yourself over that front leg. And that's, it's fine too. You just follow the natural calling of the posture. Remember, wherever we are, we're still finding our seat in the pose. We're coming to, to find a seat, to sit down. We associate that with coming to rest. It's coming to stop. And although we are moving through this, what we are doing, the stopping that is occurring here is the stopping from having to be the doer. It's the stopping so we can take note of, the experience of now. We meet within a text, the Tejo Bindu Upanishad. There is a statement that asana means, that state within which reflection on Brahman is easily possible. So what this means, Brahman is a term that is used to describe the all-pervading nature of consciousness, the underlying essence of being. So an asana is something that takes us into that. It takes us into the recognition of our own underlying nature. This is what we sit in. Okay, you can slowly bring yourselves up back into the center, taking a breath. And then when you're ready, bring those core legs back together. bring your hands behind your knees and draw the legs in. Give them a bit of movement. So, maybe you need to shake it out. Maybe you need to bend the knees. You can even, in fact, why don't we do that? Let's give our knees a little hug in like this. So hug your knees in towards you and perhaps wiggle it out, wiggle out the lower back a little. Yeah, you can drop your head in towards your knees if that feels nice. I can see Lucy going for that option there. So, feel free, hug in, breathe. Perfect. Okay. Let's bring ourselves out. Let's come into a downward facing dog. I'm going to make you do another wide stride position in a moment, but let's stretch those legs out first of all. So let's bring our hands shoulder width apart, fingers spread. Tuck your toes under. And just pause and again breathe. You might need to move. So, that wide stride seated posture that we did, Upavishta Konasana, can be, it requires a lot of work through the lower back muscles for us to be upright in there. So there may be a little residue of sensation from that work. So feel free to wiggle around, to wiggle your bum, to roll through the hips, to loosen any remaining tension that might be there. And then when you're ready, we're going to push ourselves up into a downward facing dog. So pressing into the hands, lifting the hips, extending back. Okay, that's it. Breathe. Nice deep breath. Now feel free to play into this. I'm going to keep talking to you whilst I make it a little lighter in here for you. So you can play into the hips. Which might be a little sway of the hips. It might be a bend of the knees. It might even be a lift of a leg. Feel free to explore. Okay, well done. We'll come forwards, but before we come down, we're going to take a little lean forwards into a plank pose. So you're going to bring yourselves to a position where you are pretty much making your body and legs in one straight line from the shoulders through the hips to the heels. Perfect. Breathing. And then you're going to bring your knees down to the floor. You're going to sit back on your heels again, taking support if you need support, or if that's really not suitable, you are free to sit in a cross-legged position for a moment and just pause and breathe. Perfect. Okay. We're going to release from this posture. You can turn yourselves so you can face towards your screen again. You can see. And we're going to come directly onto our yoga mat. So we, no support underneath the buttocks here. And we're going to bring our hands through the inside of the thighs. Now, you're going to take hold of your big toes with your index finger and middle finger, and thumb is going to come to meet those. You're going to walk your heels in towards you, and then you're going to lift up through your chest. That's it. Perfect. So the heels lift up off the floor. You're just establishing here your balance, just behind the sitting bones, and you're breathing. And then again, we're going to raise our legs up and out. Perfect. Now, you can have your knees bent here, and that's totally fine. So you might need some space for the back of the knees. Perhaps, your hamstrings don't feel fully loosened up, or, they don't have that much flexibility. It's fine to bend your knees. But if your legs extend, that's also fine too. Okay, now the next stage is a little bit more balance. We will have to counterbalance it with one of our arms. So we're going to just release the left toes. And then we're going to draw that leg in towards the other leg. Now to counterbalance that, I'm taking my arm out behind me a little. So there's a little wobble. There's a little urge of the body. It might want to roll back. So you're just bringing that foot in towards the other. So this is helping you to stay balanced with the arm out behind. And then you're going to bring that leg back out. You might need to bend your knee to pick up the big toe again and then extend it. That's it. Perfect. Lift up through the chest. And then we're going to take the other leg over. So release your right foot, extend it over towards the left leg, and then again there's that little counterbalance of the arm coming out just a little way behind you. That's it. Breathing. And then coming back in, you can bend your knee to pick up the toe and extend the leg out. Lift up out of the lower back. Perfect. Okay, let's release the legs down, feet to the floor, hands to the floor behind us. And we're going to cross our legs now in Sukhasana. Draw your buttock flesh out and back. Take support underneath your seat if you need it. So if you feel collapsed, sit yourself up on a block or a folded blanket. Rest your hands on your knees. Let the shoulders release. And let your breath flow. Now, because we've been doing loads of work here this evening through the inner thighs, there may be perhaps a little stronger sensation in this area here on the inner groin area. So again, how we can meet that sensation there, if there's any sense of gripping, is to give it the breath support. So wherever we direct our breath or our awareness of breath in the body, we will take prana. We will take life force. We will take energy. So directing, this working with the breath, it's a direct practice of working with, the animating life force that keeps us alive. And then again, we settle into our breath and we settle into our seat. We settle into the asana. We settle into the residing here in that place which, makes it easy to reflect on our own nature of being, this nature of Brahman, which is the nature, the underlying nature of everything and everyone. We hear it called many different things depending on which tradition. So this is through a Vedantic tradition. But it may be called Shiva, it may be called consciousness. It may be called the goddess, whatever, Buddha mind, Buddha nature. All of these things are essentially pointing to the same thing. The nature of being that is not limited by, our own personality, our own character. I'm not saying that we have limited personalities and characters, but, they are limited for every being in that they are not the whole picture of being. So we feel into what's beneath that. Okay, we are going to change the cross of our legs. So you might need to give the legs a bit of movement. So extend your legs out in front of you. You can move them around and then swap the legs over to the other side. So again, it's knee to ankle alignment. There's a space here. We draw the buttock flesh out and back for the purpose of bringing that little natural tilt of the pelvis forwards. It allows us to sit upright with ease. Okay. And then our hands are on our knees. Our forehead is soft. Our jaw is released. We're breathing into the inner groin area. So again, if there's any gripping there, your breath can support it. A little movement can support it. A little visualization of bringing space into that area can support. And then we're going to allow ourselves to perhaps lean into a forward bend this time. It's fine to remain upright. Perhaps if you feel just really engaged there, absorbed there, perhaps you can touch into, the underlying essence, nature of being by just simply sitting. And then, I would say, why move? You don't need to. But they may also be drawn to perhaps folding forwards, perhaps with a bit of movement, particularly if you're not feeling totally alive in the entire body yet. This can help you to start to access into the hips, into the lower back, into the groins. So just feel into. One of the things that, some of you will have heard me say it perhaps many times. I will often reflect on the fact that, we could make Tadasana, mountain pose, or Shavasana, corpse pose, our entire yoga practice. There is enough in those postures to take us to yoga. Yoga doesn't require any fancy shape. That's not to say that it can't be experienced in a fancy shape, because it can be experienced in any shape, in any position. We just have to, fully commit to it, whatever it is, to fully give ourselves to it. To apply this sense of abiding in whatever shape it is we're creating, whatever movement it is we're creating. We bring a fullness to it, a fullness of attention, a fullness of being. Okay, let's bring ourselves up slowly with ease. Taking a deep breath, letting the shoulders release, and then slowly uncrossing our legs, taking the legs forwards. Maybe you need to give them a bit of a rub. And we're going to bring ourselves down onto our back now. So just swing your legs over towards the short end of your yoga mat and then come down. Okay, and then when you come down, what we naturally want to do is to create some space in the lower back, and we do this by pressing our feet into the floor, lifting up the pelvis and extending it forwards, and then that should give us more space. And then from here, let's just bring our knees in towards our chest, and again we might walk out the pelvis so you can feel like you are picking up your hips or either side of your hips and just sort of wiggling them down your yoga mat. And then you get a nice contact through the whole of the back against the floor, and you can hold your knees and you might move around a little here, feeling the squeezing across the back of the body, taking deep breaths. Okay, and then you may bring your legs up. We're going to bend our knees and we're going to take hold of our big toes, okay? So the knees can come in towards the armpits. We have an open angle at the back of the knees. So here we have approximately a 90-degree angle at this stage. So we're playing into this posture that we call happy baby pose. And, you know, I find this posture very appropriately named because it, you know, we are taking on that shape of a baby. And then we can move across. So we might just move from side to side, moving across the back of the body, breathing. And then we're going to bring our legs out towards extension. So again, we're going for that wide stride position with the legs. Now, your knees can stay bent as much as they need to. I'm going to turn myself around so you can see what I'm doing here. But you may take your legs out wide. We're keeping our head on the floor. You are free to pop some support under your head if you need to. So the legs are out wide and we're going to play here. Maybe a little gentle rocking across the back of the pelvis. Deep breaths. Okay, now we're going to release the left foot and we're going to extend the left hand over towards the right hand, towards the foot. You can, if your hand doesn't meet the other hand, it's a big old stretch for the body, you can just take hold somewhere along your right arm. So you might be holding the wrist or the forearm, but you can reach all the way towards the foot if that's possible. And breathe. Okay, well done. Roll that left shoulder back down to the floor. Extend the hand back over towards the left leg. Take hold of the big toe. If you can reach, remember your knees can be bent as much as they need to be. And then we're going to release the right foot. And again, we're going to take that right arm over towards the right foot. Just joining the other hand, perhaps joining the big toe or holding the arm. If that's too much of a stretch to come all the way over, you just hold somewhere along your left arm. That's it. You're keeping your right leg out to the side. You're breathing. Okay, now let's slowly roll that right shoulder back down to the floor. Extend the arm out. Take hold of the big toe. Breathe. Breathe with ease. And now, again, release your left big toe. This time you can take your left arm out to the side to the floor. And we're going to fold over the left leg towards the right leg. Now, there's only so far we can go before the body wants to roll over all the way. So, you know, we're not going to roll all the way over into a twist, not at this stage. So just come to that point at which, you know, if you go any further, you know, you're going to roll over like this. So you will come and bring the leg towards the other leg, but it may not make contact. There will probably be a gap between your two legs. That's it. Perfect. Now, open that leg back out to the left. Take hold of the toe with your left hand again. release your right big toe, take your arm out to the floor, and then we're going to take the right leg over towards the left leg. And again, you may not even come past the midline. Perhaps when you bring your leg to the midline, if you go further over, you feel that urge to drop and roll into a twist. So there's a lot of work that has to come in to support this through the quadriceps, through the front of the thighs, through the abdominal muscles. So just feel into that. Your legs do not need to come together. Okay, well done. Take that leg back out, take hold of the big toe once again. And then bring the legs back in towards each other. Give the knees a hug. So again, there's probably sweet relief of bringing the legs back in together after that. So move around, take some deep breaths as you need to. And then you might come to just pause and rest. Perhaps you can feel a warmth through the back of the legs, through the inner thighs, you know, these areas that we've kind of targeted in many ways tonight. We can feel the results of that is that it's brought aliveness to those parts of the body. And this is what we're constantly looking for. This is our purpose here. To awaken ourselves on all levels. To have that experience of recognition of being. The quality of the all-pervasive nature of consciousness, of awareness. It threads through everything. Okay, just release your feet down to the floor. Take your arms out nice and wide so you can have your elbows around about level with your eyes, your hands a bit wider. And take a deep breath. You may walk your feet a little further away from you so you're spacious in the back of the knees and spacious across the front groin area. And then just find your breath. And when you find your breath, you know, we're not just finding this process of air moving in and out of the body, we're finding this process of life-giving force. It moves in, it pervades everything, it moves out and disappears into everything. Okay, you may draw your knees in towards your chest again. Walk out the pelvis. We're going to move into a little twist here. So we're going to take a deep inhalation with the knees in towards us. And then as we exhale, we're going to take both knees over towards the right side. Doesn't matter if you started taking them to the left. If you haven't, take them to the right. It makes it easier for me to describe the actions of the posture. So as the knees are coming down to the right, in fact, let's take our right hand and just place the hand so the fingers are wrapping just behind the knee of the top leg there. So there's a little bit of support. Okay, breathe. Now, one or two of you sometimes need a little bit of support between the thighs, and it's fine to pop a rolled up blanket or folded blanket there if you need it. Now, with this little hug in of the knees with the hand there, what we want to feel is this release that's coming from the top of the outer hip. So the outer hip of this top leg, it's drawing down towards the knee. So there's a little gentle pull with the hand on the knee to encourage this directional movement from the outer hip out towards the knee. And then we have a movement in the opposite direction from the outer hip up through the side of the body, up through the left side of the body and out towards the shoulder, out towards the hand. That's it, perfect. And we breathe. Now feel free to move into this. You can adjust your back arm if you need to, if that shoulder's lifting and it's not comfortable. And I think most of you are familiar with the movement that we often do of circling the arm to release. Your forehead is soft, your jaw is released, your belly is soft. So if the belly softens, this allows a deeper turn because, this is the sort of meeting point of the turn. If you feel into the belly, you can feel that, the lower half of the belly is moving in one direction and the upper half of the belly is moving in the other direction. If we tighten around that area, we kind of gather it all in together. And what we want to do is to feel a bit more freedom there, so we soften the belly completely. And this will allow more openness through the chest. It will allow more release through the knees. It will allow a deeper twist that comes from release rather than striving. Breathe. Okay, you may roll yourselves back into the center now. Come back in, place your feet to the floor, realign yourselves, realign the hips, realign the shoulders. So I've got a cat that's just joined me here. And then when you're ready, you can bring your knees back in towards your chest. And again, you can walk out the pelvis. You might give the knees a little hug in again, and feel free to move here. So the lower back can sometimes hold. It tends to be one of those areas when we move the body in yoga poses that if there's any part of the body that will really sort of take hold of a posture and hold it, it's the lower back. It tends to take longer for the lower back to release from any sort of echoes of a previous posture than other parts of the body. So, sometimes it needs a little assistance, it needs a little bit of movement or a little encouragement to release. Okay, now we're going to take our arms out wide again, so our elbows are around about level with the eyes, the hands are a bit wider. We're going to inhale deeply, drawing our knees in towards our chest, and then as we exhale, we're going to take the knees over towards the left and just land the knees to the floor. And then again, we're going to support that release of the legs down from this outer hip by taking the left hand and just wrapping it around the left leg towards the bottom of the thigh, so the fingers come in towards the back of the knee joint. It's almost like you are pulling your leg in a little closer towards you. There's a little firmness of contact here, but we don't have to create a real pulling action. But it's a gentle encouragement of this release from the outer hip joint of the top leg down towards the knees, like a little slope. And then a release from the outer hip up through the side of the body towards the shoulder. So the outer hip joint is like the peak. It's like the peak of the mountain here. And there's two ways that we can come down the mountain, down in one direction through the thigh, and in the other direction through the torso towards the shoulder. And both way down is a soft, gentle slope down. And we breathe. Belly is soft. So again, feel perhaps that point, that turning point in the belly, where the lower half of the belly is following the direction of the legs. The upper half of the belly is turning into the direction of the torso. So the more we can relax into the belly, the more release we get in both of those directions. Okay, well done. You may now gently roll yourselves back into the center. You may place your feet down to the floor, realign yourselves as you need to. Take a breath, hands on the belly. And just rest in your asana, in your seat here. In that place that allows us to recognize the underlying nature of being. Sometimes asana may be referred to as sthiti. And one of the translations of the word sthiti, so it relates to, it's cognate with the word stable and still. So we can hear these sort of origins of this word. One of the translations of it, so it can be stillness, it can be maintenance, but it can also be that which continually exists. So an asana, a sthiti, a posture is to drop into that which continually exists. So that's the center of our being. That's this underlying nature of consciousness. That's what we're dropping into. Okay. When you're ready now, we're going to roll. Well, you may not roll onto your side. We're going to come into Shavasana. So if you want to get warmer clothing, then roll yourselves onto your side and come up from your side. And then you can prepare yourselves to lay down before. So we'll come into Shavasana and then we'll do a meditation after our Shavasana. So come and lay down, give yourself support as you would normally take. So perhaps some of you will have a bit of head support. Some of you will want a blankets, maybe socks, warmer clothing. I'm going to grab my jumper, which the cat has just sat on. Oh, it's good we don't have cats wandering around in our normal yoga classes in yoga studios, isn't it? Oh, stealing everyone's clothing. Okay, so you can lay down, close your eyes. And settle your breath. I'm going to read you a little quote. This is from the teachings of Ramana Maharishi, who was an Indian sage, sort of born just before the turn of the century, and he died in the 50s. So he was an awakened sage. So in other words, he completely lived in this state that I've been encouraging us to move towards the recognition of our underlying nature of being. He was in recognition of that at all times. So I posted this up today actually on social media because it really spoke to me. So he was asked, what is meditation? And he describes it as, it is abiding as one's self without swerving in any way from one's real nature, and without feeling that one is meditating. So to abide in ourself, and this is self, which is written with a capital S. So it's not the self of identification with our name, our role, our preferences, our dislikes, our character, our personality, our mood, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, all of those things. It is the self of pure being. It is that underlying nature of being. And without swerving in any way from this nature. So to be able to act from that place, to be able to meet the world from your center. To respond from that place. And he said at the end of that, without feeling that one is meditating. So what that means is, we don't have to be the person that comes to our yoga or meditation practice and concentrates hard to do the right thing, to be the good yogi or the good meditator. We drop any idea of having to make it a particular way. We kind of allow the meditation to happen to us rather than for us to make the meditation happen. It arises by itself. So as you lay here, allow that state of meditation to arise by itself. Allow the state of being to just be there. You don't have to concentrate hard. You don't have to be the person that makes this happen. We just let go into it and it happens. Just take 3 slower, deeper, steadier breaths here. And then when you've taken those slower, steadier breaths, you may bend your knees, place your feet to the floor. And again, find your breath. So you might need a slower, deeper breath to re-find your breath, reacquaint yourself with your breath, and then allow the breath, trust in the breath that it knows how to find its own flow here. And then again, when you're ready, you may roll yourselves onto your side so you can just pause on one side, rest there. And then again, when you're ready, you may roll yourself onto your other side and pause there. And then slowly bringing yourselves out. So there may be a little bit of movement to your body that you bring. And then when you're ready, bring yourselves up from your side and come to a comfortable seated posture. So your meditation posture, finding your meditation posture, it can be a cross-legged posture, it can be a kneeling posture. Make sure that, whatever posture you adopt, the purpose of the posture is to find a position where you sit with your spine upright. Okay. And when you get that position right, sometimes a cat appears on your lap. So you can rest your hands. They're either resting on your thighs or resting in your lap. Make sure that they are resting on something. So, the blanket support or the thigh support. And then you may close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just let that closing of the eyes feel like a release, a relaxation of the eyelids. And that relaxation of the eyelids travels up through the forehead. It travels up through the forehead, over the scalp and down through the back of the head and neck to the shoulders. And then the breath softens. So we're going to come into basic mindfulness of breathing. Whereby we move through different stages of observation of the breath. And the first stage is that we're going to pay particular attention to the point at the end of each exhalation. So we will inhale and exhale, and then just notice that point at the end of the exhalation. If it's useful to you, you can count your breaths in sequences of 10. But don't get hung up on the number, on the counting if you are using this technique. Keep your attention in that little pause, that brief pause at the end of the breath. Or just simply observing it and then moving on. The breath flows with ease at its own pace. We guide our attention into that point at the end of the breath. As you continue with this stage of the breath, I'll explain the next stage, and it will sound almost as though it's the same as the first stage. But as you come into it, you'll notice that there is a subtle difference. So the next stage that we take is to observe the point just before each inhalation. So we'll notice that point, and then we inhale and exhale. And we'll notice the point just before we inhale, and we'll exhale. And we'll continue observing that subtle point just before the breath is initiated. We're noticing that point naturally. We're not trying to make it extend or be anything, have any particular quality. We're observing the breath in its natural state as it is now. Might be that that natural state moves into a slower breath because we are relaxed. But we're not deliberately moving the breath in any particular way. Just quietly observing the point which leads us into an inhalation. The next stage we're moving into now is to just be aware of the whole of the breath, to follow the whole breath through the inhalation and exhalation, through any natural pause that arises. Again, not doing anything deliberately with the breath, just simply observing the breath. Anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing. Give ourselves fully to the breath. Remembering the breath knows how to breathe itself. So our final stage of this practice is to observe the point where the breath first meets the body on the inhalation. Perhaps the tip of the nose, the inside of the nostrils, the upper lip. Wherever you first feel that contact of air with your body, as you draw it in, give that point of contact your full attention. Now just slowly come back into your breath with an overall awareness of the breath. Feel your breath into your body. Feel your contact with your seat and your cushion or block, however you are supported. And then slowly bring your hands up from your lap to Anjali Mudra, to a prayer position, to the heart center. And we're going to close our meditation, close our class by chanting Om 3 times together. So let's take a deep inhalation to prepare. Thank you all very much. Namo Vaha, Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.